today marks 1 year in office for the United States President Donald Trump in his second term. Now, in the past 12 months, Trump's second term has been marked by dramatic domestic and foreign policy situations that have reshaped the world, and receiving criticism on some of his first executive orders, including dealing with illegal immigration, creating the Department of Government Efficiency, imposing global trade tariffs on numerous countries, including South Africa, and of course his approach on geopolitics, all of that making for a heady mix. But how much of his promises has Donald Trump actually fulfilled in his first 12 months of his second term and, of course, could be last term in office? And I say could be because we'll discuss all of these matters. So to help us talk through this, we're joined virtually by social commentator Donovan E. Williams. Donovan, good morning and thanks for joining us. And in studio, I'm joined by SABC News International Reporter Khayelihle Khumalo. Kaya, thanks for coming through.
Fantastic.
So someone, Donovan, might be forgiven for asking, is it really only a year? Because it's been such a busy year. Donald Trump has been up to so much in this year.
Yeah, Trump has shown that 100 days can equal 365. He hit the ground running. I think he learned from his first term, where he tried to play president, be statesman-like, make appointments that could satisfy constituencies out of his own, etc. This time around, there was none of that niceties. He appointed, real loyalists in the sense of they would just listen to him. You would hear an FBI director talk about the opposition and blue states, and you'd hear the Treasury Secretary say crass things like, we have got the hottest country in the world, and things like that. Just basically parrot Donald Trump. So this time around, yes, you cannot believe it's a year, both on international, his domestic, and even the way he has shoved around countries. I mean, he bombed Yemen, he bombed Iran. He went into Venezuela bombing and abducting their president for whatever he thought of the president or the world thinks of him in terms of Europe in particular. But so there's so many, too many to even list right now. Besides the Epstein files, of course.
All right, which, of course, it seems the Republicans aren't too interested in the moment. But, of course, we'll come back. We'll circle back to some of these issues. Kaya, for you, how would you characterize Donald Trump's first year of his second term?
Well, I think, Sakina, it's been a very turbulent phase. I mean, you look at the whole issue of making America great again. And you go back to the very remarks that he made when he was coming back to the White House, where he was saying he's going to be a unifier, he's going to be a peacemaker, he's going to resolve the conflicts between Russia and Ukraine. But that has proven to be a very colossal challenge for him. But also, just apart from that, how he has dealt with the African continent. We saw like that peace deal between Rwanda and the DRC, but the eastern part of DRC is still quite unstable, Sakina. But also, apart from that, how he has dealt with the world, the EU, the allies of the US, this quite a very aggressive approach. I mean, look at the very contentious issue around Greenland. It's been a very dramatic time.
And he hasn't minced his words, and he can't be accused of not being a man who's true to his word, can he, Donovan?
Well, I don't know if for Trump, if it's his word or not, he's making promises or not. What Trump is doing, he's got a plan. It's about as Kaya has alluded to, make America great again. And for America to be great again means the whole world must serve America, including the erstwhile allies. The difference, I mean, let's be serious. Biden, Barack Obama, George W. Bush, etc., all the American presidents have operated in the same way, except for two ways they haven't. One is they weren't that crass. So in other words, they did it with makeup and lights and they played the game. With Trump, he's just very direct. He uses the contradictions and the gaps within the multilateral system or even internally within the country to just bulldoze forward and not care about anybody. He doesn't do any niceties. The second matter is that for the first time, unlike the others, he is threatening Europe itself, Western Europe, erstwhile allies, whereas the others have not done that. And this has made him now, because he threatens Europe, a threat to the world. If he didn't threaten Europe, you wouldn't have this pushback that you're witnessing today. And Greenland exposes that. So he uses the contradictions, he uses the shortfalls within the international system and so forth to render it to say it's useless. And so therefore America must lead. And if you do not serve America's interests directly, he will deal with you directly. He will use the might of the United States because of the threat of China. And he's very, very clear with that. And that is the danger for the whole world right now.
And of course, he said these things, but how much of it has he actually delivered upon, Khaya?
I think a very major challenge, Sakina, will have to be the economy, because he said he's going to focus on the interest of Americans. Some of his people are praising him. They're saying that he's dealing with inflation in the US, he's dealing with the issues of immigration. But also on the other side, given the very significant role that the US has played, especially in the global sphere, it's been quite a very huge challenge where we've seen the US withdrawing from the very key entities like the World Health Organizations, the Human Rights Council, and many other entities, really showing that the US is really just dismantling some of the very key global organizations that it was very quite critical in forming as part of the post-World War settlement in 1945. But also, I think what has been challenging, it's how he has been really dealing with South Africa, the whole issue about the non-existent white genocide in South Africa, and how the South African government has been so vociferous in saying that it's not the case. Crime is affecting everybody in South Africa.
But we also know Trump doesn't let the facts get in the way of whatever his narrative is. Whatever he believes, that's what he doubles down on, we've seen more often than not. And, you know, if we look at the South African situation, for example, regardless of being told in the White House by our very own president and others who had accompanied him that this notion of white genocide is a false narrative, he still buckled down on that particular matter. Donovan?
Look, Trump, in just less than a year, has built the largest, widest global right-wing movement the world has ever existed. And we need to take that into account. That right-wing movement is premised on the idea not just of white supremacy, but of white persecution. That white people are not allowed to practice their culture because they must feel guilty because of colonialism, slavery, or just general oppression and racism. And he has used that persecution complex to push forward right-wing parties across the world. No different in South Africa. None at all. So just like in Europe, that he's waiting on, and he just said it this morning, that President Macron of France won't be in power for long, so he doesn't care what he says. So too, he's looking forward to a more right-wing government coming into South Africa. So that's why he won't change his mind on white persecution or genocide in our country, no matter what anybody says to him, because he's looking forward to the government changing in South Africa, becoming more right-wing and more in tune with what you would say Western, but really USA-centric or Trump-centric. So that's why he wouldn't buckle down. He's similarly with Europe. He's looking forward to that. And on the economy, it's already started in December. It's getting stronger in January as they go to the midterms, that you're going to hear that the economy is turning around. He's even mooted the idea of giving $2,000 to $5,000, like in COVID times, to citizens who are deserving of it, and that will be mainly in the poor in red and blue states, for that matter, so that he can curry favor with them for voting in the midterms. So these are the plans he has to remain in power.
And of course, the midterms coming up in November are going to be crucial because quite a lot has happened in the US as well with regard to the economy, looking at the pressure that he's brought to bear on the Fed chair, Jerome Powell, and how that is playing out. You look at the situation with the oil reserves of the United States, which some would say has essentially been the real issue behind why Venezuela had to be invaded. So you look at all of those issues and the economy, the US economy as it stands, and the midterms then take on great significance for him.
Well, certainly, Sakina. In fact, you know, you do have the experts saying it's going to be a litmus test for Donald Trump, especially now also where you do have the ratings and also just the polls looking at his leadership qualities. You do have a very significant percentage of Americans that pointing out that he has focused quite a lot on foreign issues as opposed to what he had promised Americans about really looking at domestically the issues of the economy, the issues around the cost of living crisis, where a lot of Americans are really facing these quite a lot of domestic issues. But I think also very interesting moments right now, Sakina, will have to be the World Economic Forum. We know that it's kicked off in Davos. It's going to bring quite a very significant delegation from the US. Is it going to really interact with some of the world leaders? The German Chancellor is scheduled to be there, and many other leaders as well, especially because with the likes of Davos, I mean, this is where it's all about consensus. It's all about really making sure that multilateralism is working. But when you look at the very posture of Donald Trump, this is a man who's really proven that multilateralism is thrown out of the window.
Oh, but what multilateralism? Donald Trump has essentially, through a word and action, made it very clear that he is about unilateralism as far as the United States is concerned. Or am I reading that wrong, Donovan?
No, not at all. Not at all. That's what Make America Great Again is about, making the United States the center, or him the center of the world. I wrote an article in the Mail and Guardian just last Friday, which was published, and I compared Trump's initiatives to China's Belt and Road. And China's Belt and Road was about creating markets for China, the Belt and Road Initiative. Whereas one coined the phrase to say, with Donald Trump, it's a whips and chains initiative, because he is trying to whip everybody into line to support and to trade just only with the US. And if they have to trade with China, he shall use chains on them. He shall use whips on them, that they can only trade with China through the United States. And that's the whole world. So Donald Trump has no belief in multilateralism, but then multilateralism itself, all of us who support the multilateral system must understand itself that that system has not delivered, has not been able to deliver. UN agencies have not been able to deliver on our continent and in other parts of the world. And he uses those lack of delivery and so forth to say, why should we be there? Why should we, as the United States, prop up the budgets of all these UN agencies when they do not support us? It's a crass way of looking at it, but that's the whip. And he will continue to use it in that way. And until you sort out those contradictions, so that means Western Europe as well, who is crying foul. And remember, this is the same Western Europe that raised and weaponized tariffs when Joe Biden asked them to. So today they cry foul about of tariffs being weaponized, but when it wasn't used against them, it wasn't a problem. They have used tariffs against even countries like South Africa, even countries in other countries within our continent and Central and South America. So many of these, if anything, Donald Trump is exposing it, and he's showing that when you have a megalomaniac, when you have a bully and a belligerent leader like he is, who doesn't care about the rules, if you do not sort out these blind spots and you do not sort out these deliberate, not just now blind spots, deliberate contradictions, you're going to run into trouble like the world is today. So are you creating a Fourth Reich? Are you creating a Caesar who actually doesn't care about you?
But I do also think that we have, and the world has, focused a lot to use perhaps like, the analogy of a SWOT analysis. We focused on the strengths, we focused on the weaknesses, we focused on the threats that this presents. But have we looked at the opportunities that this moment, this Trump moment, presents the world? When Trump literally, issues an executive order removing the United States from so many of the UN organizations and treaties, that's an opportunity, because the world has been crying about a United Nations that perhaps is not fit for purpose in 2026. Doesn't this present an opportunity? And so many other issues that Trump has also touched on. Why is the world not seeing the opportunities that this presents? Kaya, and then to you, Donovan.
Most definitely, Sakina, especially because for the likes of South Africa, for the longest time, the issues around the reforms of the UN Security Council, it's been a very major issue for South Africa, where almost all the leaders, when it's UNGA, when it's that annual meeting where the world leaders descend into New York, it's been a very major issue that they raise. And in fact, even Antonio Guterres, the current UN Secretary General, he has always been very clear that there's a state of paralysis, how the current architecture is working, calling for that reform to be ushered in, but also presenting a number of opportunities, Sakina, especially for the African continent. I mean, for example, when you talk about the trade issues, when you talk about the African continental free trade area, a very big opportunity. So if you do have AGOA, as much as now we've seen the extension, but I mean, we know that the Congress has yet to decide on it, but also for the African countries to rally together, to find a way to make sure that they prioritize this continental instrument, make sure that they deal with the pockets of conflict that are still affecting the implementation phase of this key instrument.
And beyond just the reform of the UN Security Council, Donovan, you look at the Bretton Woods institutions, you look at what that has done, especially to African and other poor nations across the world. Opportunity.
Precisely. And I think you're quite correct, Sakina, when you raise, GATT and the WTO and so forth. And Trump has shown that you can just ignore it. The truth of the matter is, the nub of it, and maybe as a passing shot, is that we have way too many urban chauvinist, egocentric, selfish leaders across the globe, and this is why you haven't. This is not an opportunity. You could claim that there could have been an opportunity to take Israel aside and say, let's have proper peace in Palestine because of what has happened with the genocide. This is an opportunity where Western Europe can sit down with Russia and China and say, can we work out something? Because Donald Trump in the United States is killing global trade. But none of these are opportunities, are not regarded as opportunities, because we have too many selfish leaders. And therefore, you can't reform the UN. The UN can only be reformed by its member states, can only be reformed by the powerful in real terms. But you do not have that happening. And that's why you have a disconcerted public who recognize that we will enjoy this opera, the soap opera of a Donald Trump and so forth. But the truth of the matter is, we're losing confidence in institutions that have come out of democratic processes and the post-World War II processes, where it was about equality and prosperity. And that must bother us as a world. The opportunity is being lost.
But are we? Thanks so much, gentlemen. Unfortunately, we're out of time. Donovan, thanks for your time. Donovan E. Williams, as well as SABC News International reporter Khayelihle Khumalo, talking to us about Donald Trump's first year in office of his second term.